So we have two to-dos in two different places, but they're both essentially wanting to accomplish the same thing, which is to say we want to move this view pagination function, extract it out of profile and out of home, and move it into paginated list. So let's start by putting it here. And paginated list.view pagination is a little bit redundant, so let's just go ahead and rename that to view. Definitely going to need to expose this so that those files can call it. What I'm going to do at this point is, since I just want to make sure that this thing works properly inside this module, I'm actually just going to compile that thing alone by itself. I'm not actually going to bother compiling main.elm because I just want to see if my paginated list works properly first. Oh, it actually doesn't. Okay, let's see what errors we got. So there's a couple of problems here. One is it's acting like it needs its own message type, but it doesn't have one. Second is that it doesn't actually know what an article is. Okay, fair enough. So both of these are potentially solvable by using type variables. So if we look at our paginated list here, and we look at how it's actually being used, if I jump through these functions, it's like, okay, I'm calling page on list, I'm calling total on list. Am I doing anything else in the list? Looks like not. What do page and total do? Well, if I look at those functions, one takes a paginated list of any type variable and returns an int, and total also takes a paginated list of any type variable and returns an int. So what that means is that I don't actually need this to take an article preview. I can just make it completely unbound. I can say, yeah, I'll view this thing, and it's just going to work out fine, as far as I can tell. Let's see if that's true. Okay, so far so good. It just says I can't find a message type. So it didn't actually complain about that being a problem. So in other words, the two operations that I'm actually doing on this list, I'm getting the total count, which is to say the total number of pages in the paginated list, and I'm getting the current page in the list. Neither of those has anything to do with what happens to be inside the list, so it's totally fine for purposes of viewing the actual pagination for us to give it an unbound type variable and say, yeah, if you want to view this thing, I don't actually care what's inside of it. That's somebody else's job to deal with. I'm just here to render the pagination itself, which only cares about numbers, not about the content itself. Okay, cool. So that takes care of that one error, but we still have the other one where it says I cannot find a message type. I don't know what that is, which is fair because the paginated list itself does not have a message type. Nor do I really want to introduce one unless, again, I've gone through the motions and said, yeah, I've concluded based on how this thing is being used that it really does have so many different message types that I want to give it its own message type. But we're not there yet. Let's see if we can do without first. Okay, so how is this message actually being used? Well, we have something called clicked feed page. That's clearly a message constructor, or a message variant rather. Is there anything else? I don't really see anything. It looks like that's the only one that we actually need. So we only have this one on-click handler, and that's the only place where this comes up. So I see that clicked feed page is currently taking target page. Target page is an integer. So what I can do is I can just say, okay, page link is going to take an int to message function, which I'm going to name toMessage. And then I'm just going to call toMessage instead of that actual message constructor there of clicked feed page. Okay. Well, now PageLink takes an extra argument, which means I'm no longer able to call it using exactly what I was doing before. So I need to add an extra toMessage in here. I'm just going to propagate that up and say, view needs to also take that as an argument. Now, based on that, I extracted this thing from profile. So wherever I was calling view pagination, which appears to be only in one place, I now know that that's going to become paginated list .view, and I know what the first argument is going to be. It's clicked feed page, because that's exactly what was there before. So now I have made it so that I have successfully deleted this thing out of profile. I'm now delegating to this reusable thing inside paginated list.view, and I'm passing it exactly the same argument that I had before. So based on how I just refactored that code, everything still should work the same way as before. So let's find out if that's true. So I'm going to build the paginated list. I have a syntax error because I messed up on 107. Right, definitely going to need an extra arrow there. Okay, but I still didn't adjust the type annotation, even though I made it more flexible, but then didn't annotate it as such. Whoops, that's better. Okay, So now the paginated list compiles, and I can check to see if profile compiles. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm not going to quite bother compiling the other stuff yet because I just want to kind of work on those two files that I made the adjustments to. And sure enough, they now both compile. So we've confirmed that, number one, profile is at least from the compiler's perspective doing what it was doing before. And the logic here is simple enough that I'm pretty confident it is in fact doing what it was doing before. But I also now have this nicely reusable thing, which actually has no third-party dependencies whatsoever. It's all type variables. It's got HTML, an int, and paginated list, and that's it. Everything else is completely flexible. Cool. So let's see about doing that in the other place, which was the home page. So inside home, we have the same to-do as what we had before, and we have the same view pagination thing that we have right here. So this time I'm just going to go ahead and delete this sucker and do without. So I look at view pagination. Again, that's only called in one place. I'm actually going to undo that real quick, just long enough to grab this thing right here so that I don't have to remember it later. And now I remember from before that I'm going to use that same message that was in the implementation as the first argument to the function now known as paginatedList.view. Okay, now I'm going to run the same thing, but I'm going to run it on the home page. That worked, and if that's true, theoretically that was all that was affected by those changes, so I should be able to compile main, and then, sure enough, the entire thing now compiles, and we have successfully reused this thing that really is the same on both of those pages.